The Shooting Range. In this episode, Pages of History, the baby steps of the German Tigers. Special, Blast Overpressure, and Metal Beasts, the swift French tank. Today, we continue our walkthrough for medium-ranking machines. Please welcome the Frenchshah 25T light tank, found at the battle rating of 7.0. This machine was developed in the early 1950s by Bâtiment-Chantillon as a heavier replacement for the AMX-13. However, technical difficulties and changing requirements made the engineers drop the project in favor of more versatile MBTs. This machine's main weapon is a 90mm autoloader gun with elevation angles between -6 and +11 degrees. It has 2 machine guns and smoke launchers as well. The engine and driver are in the front, while the rest of the crew is in the turret. The Shah 25T is a classic French light tank. Mobile, strong, and with decent armor, for its class of course. In a race, it'll leave most medium and heavy machines in the dust. That enables you to slip into a favorable position first in a round, and check the battlefield and the flanks, and make a move before anybody knows it. Your main ammo here is APC rounds, with 215mm of penetration at point-blank range. It's more than enough to damage most enemies in the front, but of course it still lacks the explosive effect of the APC-BC or later shells. If you want to destroy the enemy with one shot, or at least incapacitate them, you might need to memorize the layout for ammo racks and the gunner's position. With an autoloader, the task gets much easier since you can shoot a round each 6.7 seconds. Another ace in the hole for the Shah 25T is its amazing transmission. It can accelerate up to 65 km per hour both forward and in reverse. The latter, coupled with the turret moved to the rear and an overall small hull, enables a curious tactic. Roll out of cover with your rear, make a shot, and roll back in again. Just don't do it too often and never spend too much time in the enemy sights. Compared to other light tanks, this Frenchie has decent protection. It can survive some hits, thanks to its armor shape and engine compartment being in the front. Still, you shouldn't rely on that. A light tanker is alive as long as no one sees them. And of course, never forget to use active scouting. Each mark improves teamwork and gives you a discount for an air raid when the marked enemy is destroyed. In episode 204, we shared the story of how difficult it was for Porsche to create the Tiger. Today, we're going to tell you its competitor's development story, and boy, was it just dramatic. Henschel was commissioned with the task of developing a new tank to hit its mass production in less than a year. In such a rush, the production had to start before the prototype was properly tested. Keep in mind, it was a very sophisticated machine with cutting-edge technology. During the spring of 1941, Henschel was up to their elbows deep in working on the heavy VK 36.01. Its main feature was an unusual gun with a cone-shaped barrel that promised a high penetration rate with a smaller size and weight. There was one hiccup with it though. It used rounds that required tungsten, a metal in very short supply in war times. That's how the engineers bore an idea to redesign Henschel chassis for Porsche's Tiger turret with an 88mm gun. Easier said than done. The new tank's expected mass exceeded 50 tons. Try crossing a river on such a giant. Few bridges could support that. Well, there was a workaround. Deep wading. Okay, that was kind of fixed. But there were some other challenges with the transmission and the chassis, and those are the main load-bearing mechanisms in a tank. And the schedule was oh so tight. The development for Tigers started in July 1941, and by April 1942, the first 2 prototypes had to be ready for a showcase. By the way, the Tigers weren't actually known as Tigers at the time. They had internal code names instead, but we'll call them Tigers anyway to keep it simple. So timing was critical. For Henschel, this challenge was more important than anything. They'd been working on heavy tanks since 1937, but the Army hadn't received a single series model yet. Should the new Tigers fail too, the company risked losing new orders, so the engineers would have to go back to trains and trucks. And so they labored on, day and night. There was no time for any meaningful internal testing, of course, and the tank was simply loaded onto a shipping platform once it was done. It was anyone's guess as to how it would go through its paces. The 19th of April saw both Porsche and Henschel Tigers drive 11 kilometers all on their own. Naturally, even that short hike uncovered issues, so the rest of the day had the engineers and workers busy with repairs. You see, the next day was D-Day, the demonstration day. The tanks were to show their maximum speed. The Porsche Tiger was first, and it managed the 1 kilometer race with no sparks. Then it was Henschel's turn. It drove 800 meters, making 40 kph, before the situation got really hot, in the most literal sense of the word. Due to cooling system issues, the engine compartment reached a temperature of 110 degrees Celsius. With all the smoke, the crew could barely breathe. What could they do? The tank could simply ignite if they pressed on, but they couldn't fail the demonstration when the future of the company was at stake. Kurt Arnold, a Henschel engineer, got an idea. He stopped the Tiger some distance away from the committee and approached the members, creating a distraction. Thus, he gave the Tiger some time to cool down, while the members talked to Porsche and Henschel reps and made group pictures. Soon they left, and the company's reputation was saved. You might think it had been unfair to win a decisive competition in such a way, but in fact, it wasn't the reason Henschel won. Both tanks saw mass production, with both engineering teams doing their best at improving their models. Porsche's Tiger, however, later encountered serious engine issues, and that's when the competitor had been green-lit. Yes, the first demo had the prototype almost smolder, but the engineers managed to fix the main flaws, so Henschel's Tiger became the most mass-produced heavy tank in Germany. Now, what happened to the ingenious Kurt Arnold? He spent many years working Henschel's test ranges, and his words are the exact reason we know this story. A recent update brought a new mechanic to the game: blast overpressure. Let's see how it changed the game for those using high-explosive rounds. The change is the most noticeable in destroying lightly armored vehicles. You don't even need a direct hit anymore. Here we have a German SPAAG, the SDKFZ-62. A single 76mm HE round is enough to destroy it even if it explodes a few meters away. If your enemy drives a vehicle with an open compartment, penetration isn't necessary anymore. For example, The Sture Emil has a 50mm thick armor plate in the front of the compartment. The only HE round that could penetrate that is the enormous 155mm one. Thanks to the new mechanics, though, even a much smaller 85mm shell can put it out of action. By the way, the change goes both ways. You have to be extra careful when your open vehicle shoots high explosive shells. For instance, the American M8 tank destroyer can easily self-destruct if it shoots carelessly at point-blank range. Now, it's totally different when you're driving a vehicle with no open compartment. Smaller HEs are useless against it, so let's talk about larger ones. After the penetration of the hull, the pressure of the blast bleeds in, destroying some modules and harming the crew. Here's how it all happens. Let's take the Panzer IV Modification G and the M4A3 105 to show you. When we send a round at the German tank's 20mm armor plate above the transmission, the blast destroys it, and 2 more crew members too. Those sitting in the turret are safe from the shrapnel, but the shockwave can still reach them, spreading inside the compartment. Let's take a larger shell, say 122mm, and a heavier target. The Tiger I would do just fine. Before the update, your only hope was for the careless or inexperienced player to keep the side ammo racks full. Now, though, it doesn't really matter. If you penetrate the rack above the track, the shockwave will reach every one of the crew members inside. The update also affected vehicles armed with HE rockets. You don't have to look for vulnerabilities anymore. Simply find a target and shower it with your rockets, just so. Well, we hope you enjoy the new explosions and nice frags with HEs. Meanwhile, we're going to answer some of the questions you ask us in the comments. The first question was sent by a player called Devon Romano. Why does the Breda 88 seem to have a bomber viewport, but no way to access or use it? Did the Italians just think it would be cool to have a window there? Hello, Devon. The plane didn't actually have a bomb sight. That viewport in the bottom of the fuselage was meant, you won't believe it, for a better view. The Breda 88 is still pretty good against tanks, though, thanks to good handling and a convenient bomb placement. Sky Streak writes, "What is the IR spotlight and how do I use it?" Hi, Sky Streak. The IR spotlight can highlight targets for night vision devices that catch reflections coming from objects. Be careful using it. Others can see your tank just as well when it's on. Another question comes from Stavros Ioannou. How can I get some aerobatic smoke for my aircraft? Hi there! Aerobatic smokes are available to everyone by default. You simply need to set up a bind for it. Go to Controls, Aircraft, Miscellaneous, Aerobatic Smoke. Chonka Sheep asks, what premium tanks do you recommend I buy? Hi, Chonka. The choice is so huge, we can't list them all even if we wanted to. You can always check out the Climbing the Ranks videos, though. They tell you all about the best tanks for each nation, premium machines included. And the last comment for today was written by Trisuk. How do we get a new plane for Germany? Hello there! Why, of course, the German air tree will continue receiving new models. For instance, we added a new famous jet fighter recently, the F-4F Phantom II. You guessed it, that's it for today as well. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT, or noon Eastern Standard Time. Subscribe, because we'd like you to, and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to leave a like, because you do, and share your thoughts and comments and hopes. See you next week.